into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of the Tight Pants Society.
No f***ing play is that a gimme, right?
Let's go! Oh, this is a full-blown Let's Go edition of Gas, the Gresh Anik Show. Anik, how are you, babe?
Oh, great, great. You know, you were talking about the UFC Fight Night right out of the gate. Obviously, we're going to go heavy NFL draft, but I like that you keep your eyeballs on the UFC. You know, a lot of these professional sports fans, I hate to say, but kind of like me growing up who weren't tapped into combat sports. I like when there's a crossover. My football guy, Gresh, taps into a little UFC. I love it.
Oh, I love it. It was a good main event that we had on Fight Night. Another good Fight Night main event. I know you are going to be a part of that on UFC Fight Pass, which is really cool. And then, of course, we have Bilal Muhammad is finally getting back in the ring in a UFC pay-per-view. Yep, Bully. Is that 7-11? Is that what that says?
7/27.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the date on which he became the champion of the world.
Well, he ain't losing this week. I've already locked in my wager on one Bilal Muhammad to defend his championship coming up on May the 10th. So I love UFC. You know it. I know it. I love it that you and I and Cody were all kind of, texting back and forth and during the draft and the first round, and then Shadeur Sanders slides. And before we get to the great Sanders family and Coach Subprime out there in Colorado, I was like a puppy with two Peters when this Patriots draft was over with, because they came away with a little bit of everything they needed. But Jay, let's jump right into this Patriots draft. I came away satiated. They did a good job of getting a kicker along the way. They've added some depth. And I just look at it this way, Jay. If the first two picks come through this year, if Will Campbell's a starting left tackle and Travion Henderson is one of your rotational running backs, this draft feels like a win just with those two dudes.
Oh, last time I checked, I think they signed Milton Williams in free agency. Okay. I cannot curb my enthusiasm, right? So they're 60-1 right now to win the Super Bowl, right? They were 75-1 after some of the free agent acquisitions. They were 125-1 before I think any of the free agency began. But what I will say is I didn't talk about them as a quote unquote contender. And I'm not necessarily going there yet. But gosh, man, it really, ironically, it comes down to something I've said on several shows. It comes down to Drake May for me. You know, you've built this roster. You talk about getting up to par. How's the 22-year-old who's turning 23 in August going to be able to rise his game to be able to lead these guys? That's my question.
Now he's got the pressure on him of having to do so, because a lot of the excuses are now gone. There is a real head coach and not an idiot in there. There is a good, with some depth pieces, offensive line around him. You and I are going to dive deep into the wide receiver room, but good Lord, look at it last year to look at it this year, just going into camp. My God, what a different feel in that room.
Well, it's unbelievable. Dare I say, like, it's a position of almost like depth. I know they don't have that stud, but they're deep. Like, who's going to be the missing piece? And if we just stay there, right? Stephon Diggs making the roster. Maybe he'll take a little bit of time to ease his way in, given the injury. But certainly Kyle Williams, Mac Hollins. I mean, Kendrick Bourne. I want to stop there because I feel like there's a lot of different. I absolutely love Kendrick Bourne when he's a football player on a good football team playing a role. I think he's super underrated. I think he's just been lost between injury and just a shit football team. I hope he isn't the piece that's traded out here.
Well, look at it this way for Bourne, right? So he got here in 21, which I do believe, or it was either 21 or 22 when Mac Jones was here and Bill was running things. So if you just think about 21 to 22 to 23 to 24 and how much change there's been in the Patriots organization. Because remember, it went from McDaniels to Matt Patricia to then Bill O'Brien to then the goof as Gerard Mayo and then the group that you have now. And I feel like, Jay, for the first time, this is really the first time that Kendrick Bourne would have the ability to operate as a New England Patriot with a little bit of certainty in what is going on in his career and around him. So there's the part of me that does think, boy, this guy might be a nice trade candidate. There's a way to get you a 5th or a 6th round pick along the way. then again, Jay, the more I think of it, this is the first time the guy's going to have something stable he can really sink his teeth into, and it's with somebody he already played for.
Well, and that you took the words out of my mouth. How many guys on this roster on the offensive side of the ball played for Josh McDaniels when he was with the Patriots? Not many. So I love it. It's really going to be interesting. The two guys, Polk and Baker, who were drafted last year, not too, I think 37 and 110 overall. The fact that those two guys, I think there's a great chance those two guys are not in the 53. I know one's better.
No, and I think Polk is going to be on there because he was a second rounder. And I'll tell you this, Jay, I think Jalen Polk does a lot of things that Mike Vrabel's going to like. Works hard, will block, is willing to be unselfish. You want to get the ball, especially in the McDaniels offense and some of the, connections to Belichick. I definitely think that is the way to go to be able to get on the field. But is it a lock that Pop Douglas is automatically going to be the slot receiver? Where does Kayshon Boutte fit in? I would say for those guys, they would it's going to sound bad, but the way I say this. It's almost as if those guys will be rooting for Steph Diggs to take a while to get back from the knee injury and maybe need a little bit of time on a PUP list or something like that for a couple of weeks to make it easier for some of those guys to be able to make this roster. But if Diggs is upright, we know that Diggs, Hollins, Williams, I think Polk is a lock because of what happened last year. And then you're talking about your fifth and sixth guys in a lot of ways of Pop, Boutte, Javon Baker, and Kendrick Bourne. And I think there's a chance Kendrick Bourne really makes this. He's either making the roster or they're flipping him for a middle round pick that we will hopefully be gaga over next year.
Gosh, he's a unique player, and depending on how Kyle Williams develops. But I will say, and I think we should sort of start and go through round by round, sort of the picks, give a quick analysis here and there. But I will say one more thing about Drake May, right? Oftentimes, if I go away to travel for the UFC and I come back, I have two daughters, age 8 and 11. I'll be away from them for a week and I'll get back and I'm like, you look older or you look a little bigger or whatever it may be, even though it's only been a week. And this may sound like a little bit of a joke, but I'm actually hoping that Drake May actually looks older. Like looks more like a man than a boy when he gets there and develops a little bit, right? The brain isn't fully developed till you're 25 years old, kid's 22. I mean, I that just is not lost on me, the difference in age between him and Jaden Daniels. And I think that for me, as much as I love Drake May, you see the North Carolina helmet over my shoulder with his signature on it. I am a little concerned about him. I really am. I think he's got to raise it up.
No, you're correct. And the reason for that is because I think Gerard Mayo and crew were willing to do okay, here's our star guy. Let's make sure we pat him on the bum and do everything around him. Whereas Mike Vrabel's going to be like, dude, you're just another person here. I walked in the door and I inherited you. So if you really want to be the guy, then bust your hump and show me that I should invest in you. Because the one thing I do like, Jay, about the way they're building this is if we get 2 years down the road and you find out Drake May isn't the guy, there should still be enough here that if you repurpose the position, you would still have a chance to win. And I think still really have a chance to win at a high level, given the way the roster is layered. So I'm with you on Drake May. I am optimistic that it will all work out. But the one thing I believe to a moral certainty is they're not going to coddle him because Vrabel inherited him. So it's almost like Vrabel is the one sort of setting the tone, not allowing May or his family or his dad or everybody else to want to jump in and render a bunch of opinions that we shouldn't give two monkey shits about.
Well, it feels as though the ceiling for this team is getting higher every day, and we're not even approaching the preseason. I think a big reason is number 66 out of Louisiana State University. I wish he was Bill Campbell. I wish he was going BC. How about Bill Campbell? I can't wait to watch him play. You talk all you want about his short arms. Dude, 6'6", squatting 600 pounds. He's a beast. That is a motherfucker. I can't wait to watch him play. Show me that guy's going to move to guard. I don't think it's happening.
No. He's going to be the left tackle. And and the thing that I love about this kid is it's like they showed him squatting 620 pounds and he kind of winked at the camera before he did it. And he went down. He did it pretty easily, right? I love it that he was uncomfortable in a suit. That lets me know, in all seriousness, to me, that lets me know as a former offensive lineman that he is a real fat. That, yeah, you can put the suit on him, right? But he was totally uncomfortable. He's fidgeting in it and stuff like that. That's when you know you have a real fat. Like,
and you want a real fat. Is that
you
what you're saying?
do. Hell yeah, you want a real fat.
Is Joe Thomas, the retired Joe Thomas, because a lot of these offensive linemen retire and then they get shredded. Is Joe Thomas a real fat?
He was a real fat. Now he's a TV star. But you know why? You know what made him a real fat, in my opinion? He gets drafted. He's not there to mug. He's fishing. They're literally, I don't know if you remember this, when Joe Thomas got drafted, they go to here's a photo of the fishing boat he's on, and he's casting a line. Meanwhile, they drafted him, and it's like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I got a marlin on the line or something like that.
Dude, like
it's
he's
great.
already a Hall of Famer before he gets drafted. Unbelievable. Did you see Will Campbell reference your guy, Matt Light?
I did. He heard your slander and said, "F that. I'm gonna put this Anik in a corner right now."
Yeah, exactly. But
here's the thing, and in all seriousness, and it's funny because you and I went back and forth of you want more out of Will Campbell than Matt Light brought to this team, and I kind of look at Will Campbell and think if he can give this team 10 years of high level play, and then it is he's beat up, we'll see what happens. If this kid is here for a decade, I think we'll all end up loving him. He may never be an all-pro, but, as you and I have kind of texted back and forth, the guy's a grinder, and he really connects with Vrabel, and that kind of tells me something because Vrabel is looking to build a certain kind of football team.
No question about it. When you talk about drafting the best player, drafting for need when you're sitting in that number 4 spot, and we've talked a lot about sort of how they could have had the number 1 pick, but I've always felt with this organization, as soon as they sort of got rid of Mayo, that they really couldn't mess up a lot of what was happening. And I really do, but whether it was Vrabel or Ben Johnson, or whatever they did with it, and I feel as though even with the number 4 pick, you almost couldn't mess it up. We talked a lot about these blue chip athletes, and I feel very thankful that we're sitting here today and we were in the number 4 slot because I feel as though they need Will Campbell, not just because they need an offensive lineman. They need that leadership on that side of the ball desperately. I think he's going to provide it from day one. I think he's going to give Drake May tremendous confidence, and being able to move the other pieces on the offensive line around because you now slot him in, I think is a huge piece too.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the way the offensive line has been layered, there's the appropriate amount of depth there, which wasn't there last year. You do have multiple options. You're not insulated for a backup left tackle just yet. That's probably going to be Morgan Moses, assuming the Campbell's going to start. But, Jay, I love that you brought up the drafting for need, because there are different ways to fill your needs on a football team, right? And I am of the, boy, if your team can at least get on the field, then the draft is almost like a bonus. But if you look at the last 2 years, New England knew they were going to have a hole, but by the time the scouting was done and ready to go, they knew they could draft someone to put in there, not so much a free agent, right? Kind of the same thing at left tackle. They knew, I think, going into the draft, going into the process, well, we really like Will Campbell, and we can find a left tackle in this draft. And they took care of everything else on offense. And in the other positions, like with Williams, for example, wide receiver, you drafted for depth a little bit. So I love the fact that the one remaining piece that needed to be filled was filled with the number 4 pick. And then after that, like, I had texted you and your brother during the day about, hey, man, I'm hearing some stuff about Travion Henderson, right? And, I know Greg Bedard had the report.
Great call. Yes. Hey, I'm interrupting you. Gresh absolutely nailed it. He texted me and John the day before it happened. So kudos to you. Go.
Well, I'd heard some rumblings that it was O-line or running back. I'm so much more excited that they took the running back, because we were talking about getting the passing back. And I think Chris Ballard, the Indy GM, is a dope, right? However, I heard him talk about Travion Henderson in the passing game being the most complete guy ready to come into the league. So if you've added someone like him in the James White role, Jason, like, that's the part that gets me. He's not just going to be in the James White role. This is a guy who is low-key RB1 in 2 years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, James White on steroids. I think that he can be I think he can impact the game on first and second down as well.
Yep.
And when they talk about him being the best third down back, the way this league is constructed, you got to do a lot of things on first and second down that maybe you want to do on third down. And I think this league is evolving so quickly that you're going to want to be using backs. And I think Ramondre Stevenson, who is not my favorite dude, I don't like the way he spits the ball all over the field. And I just think he's limited in the passing game. You know, 1 fumble and 650 touches for Henderson at Ohio State. And I just think playing at that high level, I can't wait. And I just, you know, to me, I like Gibson, actually. I really do like Antonio Gibson. I like him a lot more as the third back. Ramondre Stevenson as not your full bell cow that maybe he's part of a 1-2 punch. Give me all of it.
Well, let's remember this. And the one, I can't believe I'm about to compliment Matt Patricia. This makes you want to throw up in my mouth. But if there's one thing that Matt Patricia did that was good for Ramondre Stevenson, was that the year he was running things, they threw him the football a lot. Remember, he had 80 catches that year, which is a lot for any running back at the NFL level. So I think what McDaniels finds at running back is the ability to call what he wants when he wants. And Jay, like you mentioned, with Brady, you could put, you know, the passing back, quote unquote, in there, and you were still really dangerous because of who you had at quarterback. Now the tells aren't going to be as big. And I like Ramondre more than you do. But the thing about Ramondre is he can catch it out of the backfield. He got sloppy with the football last year because they were poorly coached. I'm hoping Vrabel cleans that up the way Bill did. But if you think about it from a Josh standpoint, whichever back is on the field, there are no tells anymore. And to your point, Jay, on the whole how the game is evolving, that to me is what you're really looking for. That I can turn around and hand it to a 225-pound back, but if I want to run a screen to the wide side of the field with him, he's got hands enough and vision enough to be able to get going. That's a great tweet right there. The whole Drake May watching Travion Henderson. Here's the other thing about Henderson too. And this is what Drake May should really like, Jay. Both Ramondre and Henderson are really good in pass protection. And if you're going to leave your running backs in there to be able to do whatever, they got to be able to do a little bit of everything. And they're going to make sure that Drake May isn't going to get blasted in the face or he's pulling molars out of his mouth.
I love it. You know, you talk about fumbling, and we're going to move on to the third-round pick out of Washington State, Kyle Williams. He had 8 drops last year, by the way, so I think he's got to get that cleaned up, by the way. But other than that, can't find much negative on Kyle Williams. Chris Sims, who I really do believe in his analytics to a great extent. This was his number 2 receiver in the whole draft behind Travis Hunter. Give me all of that. But it just looks like the right type of dude, right? I talked about the kid out of, Wiggins, the kid out of Iowa State. I didn't want him. He looked more like the Polk and Baker type guys to me, like a little bit skinny, not the explosive. So I like this dude, Kyle Williams. He's a dog and a little bit unknown. So for me, I'm thrilled about that. I think he's a big play dude, just in a lot like the way Henderson is. Your thoughts?
Well, and I think for Kyle Williams, he's got the ability to work in eventually. That's what will make it so fascinating about how or who they keep at wide receiver. I wouldn't rule out they keep 7 at the position. Now, it's unlikely because normally you get a special teamer in there, and you and I and everyone else has been taught that, you know, guys like Matt Slater, they're special teamers. They're not wide receivers, but they're in that group. I don't know if there's any within this group that kind of stand out that way. But look, with Williams, it's the, you know, can you, and we see it right there. Can you throw it to him short, and does he have the ability to get deep? And then pretty good hands right there and getting the feet down. This is him matched up against Travis Hunter. Boom, off the line of scrimmage. And look what he did with that route. He didn't like bend it toward the sideline a little bit. He gave the quarterback a dual way room to throw. So I would say evaluate the quarterback play at Washington State. Like maybe when Cam Ward was there 2 years ago, Williams looked a lot better than he did with Ham Hands Harry, whoever was throwing him the ball this past season. But I'm with you. I like Williams. I'm bullish on him. I'm just not expecting him until week 9 to start to show up.
Makes sense. Other pick in third round, 95th overall, the center, Jared Wilson out of Georgia. I love how they sort of did their trading in this draft, right? They accumulated some draft picks, traded down here or there, but a lot of people say this best pure center in the draft, right? I think he ran a 4.8, 4.40, whatever. But when you have Dante Scarnecchia and Doug Marrone there, and obviously they have Bradbury, who has a little bit of a relationship with Drake May. So certainly if Bradbury, you know, I heard from some Vikings fans that said, you know, Drake May's cooked. Bradbury not going to protect in the pass. So I like getting a kid out of a big school, played some high-level football that potentially could be a starting center behind Drake May, in front of Drake May.
And as soon as the draft was over on yesterday, so it'd have been Monday as you and I are talking right now, they ended up cutting the other Andrews, Jake Andrews, who was the backup center. I also know they're cross-training Cole Strange there as well. So I do think in getting Wilson, and I had the name wrong in texting everybody, but I had heard some things about this kid as well, because I do think the Patriots know that the next biggest hole on their offensive line long-term is going to be center. And it's critical to match up a center with a young quarterback. Tom Brady was among the rare guys, Jay, to me, who could play with all these different centers, and it didn't affect him at all. If anything, it was the center that had to get up to speed to match Tom Brady. So can you find your battery, let's call it, the way you would a pitcher catcher?
Yeah.
Can you find that with the center and the quarterback over the next couple of years?
Right. I mean, obviously had a great connection with Dan Copen before it was Andrews. And, I will say the offensive line has always been about the sum of the parts to me. So Matt Light, I think, was the victim of being part of a great, I don't want to go back to it, part of a great organization, part of a great line, had Brady there. So I think he played the sort of high profile position, but I think Mankins is a far better player, in my opinion. We could go
Logan Mankins is a borderline Hall of Famer.
Right.
He was that good. He was among the rare guys to look at Belichick in a contract standoff and win. That tells you something.
Bingo. No Super Bowl rings for Logan Mankins, which kills me. So Cody put out there a couple undrafted free agents, local guys. Jack Conley out of Boston College, Cole Berto out of Merrimack College. I love Dante Scarnecchia. Look at these local guys in New England, because you can be sure some of these guys just need coaching, right? They got the size, but maybe they're not great athletes, but it's a big mental game, I think, with the offensive line.
Well, let's remember this, because Ozzie Trapillo came off the board in the late second round, the tackle from BC. My agent actually represents him, so I've learned a lot about Ozzie. Good kid. He was the one that Penn State tried to poach. When they lost Olu Fashanu, they called up to the Heights and were like, hey, we'll give you this. And, BC stepped it up a little bit, but he went in the second round. Pete Kendall's kid, the center at BC, small but scrappy. There are guys who can survive that way. We'll see if he's as good as the old man. But here's what interests me, Jay. None of the draft capital was spent on any one Boston College other than this undrafted free agent kid. Who was at Boston College last year as an analyst? That'd be Doug Marrone, the offensive line coach. So I'm not saying Conley's going to come in and blow everybody away and surprise everyone and should have been like a first or a second day pick. But there's a little bit of institutional knowledge there when it comes to Doug Marrone as to making an investment in a player like this. And to your point, Jay, I wonder if that's hey, this kid's just a year away. Like, get him in the pro game and get him 3 hots on a cot. And let's put 10 more pounds on him, get him bigger, and see if he can compete next year. Yeah. Those are the guys I love, because that's what you want on your practice squad as well, helping everybody get better.
Yeah, and get him in the room with Bill fucking Campbell. I'm telling you, I can't get enough of that guy.
You know what? If I meet Will Campbell, I'm going to ask him. I'm going to be like, is it William? Because if so, why don't you go by Bill? And seriously, I would have no problem asking another Larjo that. I'm sure it's not the first time he would have been asked, why don't you go by Bill?
Well, one of my great friends in high school, his dad was Bill, and he went Willie. Come on.
Willie.
All right, Willie. Great golfer, by the way. All right, so a couple. I just want to touch on a couple of these. We don't have to spend too much time. But Craig Woodson, 4th round safety out of Cal, right? I just love this. I think the kid was in college football for 6 years, right? He's a team captain, bounced around a few different schools. He was the only team that met with him individually was the New England Patriots. Maybe he's going to be more of a special teamer, but we already have some starters out there. But, I don't understand. Duggar is certainly a stud. I like him more than most. Whether he's going to be a starting safety or not, but I like the type of player, right? 24-year-old kid, a guy that I think is a great chance to make the 53 out of the 4th round.
Well, when I look at the safety spot, and here's some of the questions that I have kind of coming out of the draft, is are there enough corners? Because I see Christian Gonzalez, I see Marcus Jones, I know there's Carlton Davis. Then after that, you're getting into Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden. The reason I bring this up, Jay, is because does Woodson have some coverability, right? Because you can live with 3 corners if you have a safety who could jump in there and be a part of the nickel package, right? So I don't see enough corners on the roster, but I see a whole bunch of safeties from Duggar to Peppers to Epps, who they signed. Del Pettis is there. Mapu is there. They draft this kid. it makes me wonder how the safeties are going to be involved in coverage under this new Patriots defense with Mike Vrabel and crew. And it makes me think that maybe they're looking for a matchup safety along the way because the corner depth might not be where they need it just yet.
Yeah, although we love Marcus in the slot.
I have no issue with Marcus Jones being a slot corner. If he starts, I got a problem because that's where he gets pantsed.
Yeah,
leave him on the inside. He's okay. Put him on the outside, not so much. But I do wonder about the cover skills for someone like Wilson and Jay. Like, is Jabril Peppers going to be on this roster or not?
That's a good question.
Like, we were waiting. Robert Kraft said, if certain things happen, he would be gone automatically. He isn't gone. And the reason I ask is because why was he brought here when the inimitable Joe Judge was here, of all people, is because he was a safety who could cover people. So I just wonder if Peppers is still going to be on this roster. Is he almost the fourth cover guy if you do go to a dime?
I hear you. So a couple other draft picks. We could spend all day on this, but in the 4th round, Joshua Farmer, defensive tackle out of Florida State, right? So he said he was projected to be drafted early. He told reporters there were 16 defensive tackles selected before him. He knew that. Quote from him, "Everyone in the world knows that's not how it was supposed to go. I'm going to get there and prove everybody wrong." 5th round, Braden Swinson out of LSU. Another great quote. "You're getting a dog for sure. I win my one-on-ones. I pass rush. I really know how to get to the ball." I just have a different confidence in their sort of mid-round picks because I believe in the regime making the selections.
Josh Farmer will make us see Christian Barmore 2.0. I really believe that.
Wow.
Longer guy, not as big, but the one thing that I like about Farmer is that he plays with some thump. I like the long arm D tackles. I hated long arm D tackles because if they got inside of you, like, honestly, whenever they're matching up in camp, I want Farmer working on Will Campbell a ton because I want to see if the kid can beat tackles, but I also want Campbell going against long arm defensive linemen to learn how to reset and get his hands in there. I think Josh Farmer might be the guy, Jay, in this draft group. We're already in love with Campbell. We're already in love with Henderson already. I think the guy after the preseason that's got the chance to make us really fall in love is Josh Farmer working into that interior group. I think the guy can play. And they get their kicker as well. They get the kicker from the U, this guy, Andrew Borregales, who apparently hits everything. And sneaky cap manipulation coming, friend, if I can give it to you here a little bit. Yeah. So the 7th round pick, the kid Julian Ashby from Vanderbilt.
Yes.
A 7th round pick contract normally doesn't hit $1 million in cap value, or that's about where it's at. Joe Cardona is making 1.5 in just salary this year. So read the tea leaves. Yeah. Vrabel ain't going to pay a long snapper the way that Bill Belichick did. So I expect it, unless Julian Ashby completely comes in and craps his pants and can't snap, I think, unfortunately, Sergeant Cardona is probably going to be sent on his way because the money is just going to be too much.
And apparently a lot of teams were going to be chomping at the bit to try and sign Ashby as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
But in terms of the kicker, apparently at the pro day, those that were outside of that facility, it sounded like a fucking cannon when dude was drilling it. And 62 out of 62 extra points last year. I appreciate that, right? I know they're close, but it is what it is. 18 and 19 field goals. I know he's never kicked in cold weather, but they selected the kicker they wanted in this draft. And you know what? Like, you brought up sort of, veteran kicker, but you know what? We talk about 32 quarterbacks, or the best 32 quarterbacks in the world on the planet. Who are the 32 best kickers on the planet? I bet they're not all in the NFL. So I like this. I find that a lot of these young kickers, it's all about what's in between the ears. And so hopefully he has what's in between the ears, because gosh, John David Booty? Is that the other? No, thanks.
Well, and I think the other thing too is Vrabel will have an approach about making this kid win the job. Right, that was one thing that I had big quibbles with last year with Mayo, is too much of no, you're the guy. Don't worry about it. You have the position. Let's just settle in and make nice and ultimately try to coach you up. No, there's going to be, bet your ass, there will be a veteran kicker in there, if for anything, just to maybe scare the kid a little bit, or if they, because really, I think it's I try to say, Borregales.
Oh,
Anyway, I don't know. I need John to help me with this.
yeah, we'll get that one.
The kicker from the U is going to have a challenger, and maybe the kid ends up winning the job, and that's fine. Or maybe it goes the way of when like Young Wei Koo was here and people like that, where you might stash him on the practice squad to ultimately get him right between the ears. But to your point, golfers and kickers are the exact same people mentally. Exact same.
Yeah.
And you talk to a golfer and they get the yips. It's the exact same thing as a kicker. Kickers start farting around with their feet. Hey, turn the ball a little differently. Let's change the angle of the ball. All that kind. It's no different than a golfer. Up in the stance, back in the stance, all that kind of stuff. Exact same thing.
Anyone who doesn't think Justin Tucker's failures on the field this year were because he had the whirlwind of, getting fancy above the sheets in the massage parlors. I'm telling you, he wasn't even probably present when he was kicking some of those footballs.
Hey, so how about the Patriots getting Mr. Irrelevant? Do you remember the last time the Patriots had a Mr. Irrelevant? Luckily, it got burned in my brain because of working with Zolak for so many years. If I'm not mistaken, Marty Moore in like 92, maybe remember him, the line they called him Swamp Chicken. So I'm pretty sure Swampy was the last Mr. Irrelevant that the Patriots picked, and we'll see if Kobe Minor ends up making the team. But, the Mr. Irrelevant thing, you get a parade in California. Like, there's a whole Mr. Irrelevant.
Oh,
really? And if you're first of all, I'm an idiot for watching that pick, right? So they had the woman and the guy and like two of the daughters come out or whatever, and she was like, hey, I'm here to make the 257 pick for MrIrrelevant.org. And then literally took like 4 minutes to tell everybody all about it. And then they were like, oh, yeah, it's Kobe Minor from Memphis. It was almost like they forgot to announce the player because the woman was getting the plugs in there for the Mr. Irrelevant parade that's in like Santa Rosa, California on an effing Tuesday.
I love it. You see Ariel Helwani announce a pick for the Buffalo Bills. Dustin Poirier announced a pick for the New Orleans Saints. Maybe sometime we're going to get my boy John Anik in there announcing a pick for the New England Patriots. I mean, talk about a life thrill. And Helwani, was on the mic for probably a full minute.
He did, and there were some WWE folks in there as well, like Seth Rollins, who was big in WrestleMania. Yeah. He came out and did one of the earlier picks and just eviscerated Green Bay. It was fantastic. But I think Jimmy Uso they mixed in there as well. They had they had people from WWE, they had UFC. They also had here's an actor from the Wonder Years or something like that. And it's like, who is this person?
Well, and it really is fascinating because the crowd was great. And then as soon as Green Bay picked Matthew Golden, which, by the way, that is so awesome for a guy that slipped a little bit to get taken by the home crowd team. That was dope.
And get to talk to everyone, too.
Yeah, it's cool. Unbelievable. And there was another, forgive me, but there was another guy who the Packers drafted who actually asked the NFL, forgive me, I don't know his name. He wanted the draft experience. He knew he was going to be drafted on day 3, I believe. So he came in, he was in the green room on Friday and Saturday, and he ends up getting drafted by Green Bay. So he actually really has that big moment. But as the NFL moves this location for this draft around, it feels like they better really try and find a team that's going to be in that pick 20 range, if you will. You know what I mean? Because I think it was a nice sweet spot. You had everybody there for most of it. It's a lot of fun to watch, man.
Clay Matthews, as Cody put in our little private chat here, was great because when he started it, and Goodell's on stage, and it's all the Packer greats and Lil Wayne. I don't know how that happened, right? It's like, here's James Jones, Clay Matthews, and Lil Wayne. But anyway, Clay Matthews did hey, everyone, I just talked to the President Trump. Right. And you could see Roger Goodell's asshole just you could see his whole body clench. And it was only Clay Matthews messing with everyone. He wasn't trolling. He was just having a little bit of fun. But you could almost hear the gasp of everyone. And then it I let the air out of the balloon. And it was a great moment. Great way to start. I went to the draft in Detroit last year where they had 750,000 people. And Jay, it's amazing the amount of people they jam in for these drafts. You know what's going to be next year? Pittsburgh.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
My kid's transferring to Pitt next year.
Oh,
so
nice.
I might have a reason to go down there. And I will say this. I think I might know some people who might be able to get John to make a pick.
I love it.
I think we might be able to, but he's a big timer now. I mean, he's got all the stuff to do, but he would create time to announce with the 231st pick of the NFL draft, the New England Patriots say NC Korolowitz or something like that.
Bingo. I like when you go with a little Jewish name. I like it. So
before we move on, I forgot about that.
Before we move on to Shadeur, right? We got always love seeing the undrafted free agent market. It's just bananas to me. It feels like a free for all and seeing who's gonna sort of click. But Lan Larison from UC Davis, picked up by the New England Patriots. A lot of people talking about him, comparison to Christian McCaffrey. 1,465 yards, 17 touchdowns last year, 62 catches, 874 yards, 6 touchdowns receiving. Never fumbled in his college career. I watched some tape on him today, and if I'm being fully honest with you, I wondered how fast he was, right? And then I see he ran a 4.46 40. So he's a little dude, but I think the ceiling's higher than a Danny Woodhead.
Oh, I would agree with that. Dude's got some nice curly locks, and that's him doing the pro day at UC Davis, which is an FCS level program, which is fine. There are 33 guys just out of the CAA alone from the FCS level who have either been drafted or signed to NFL teams. And I do like this guy's look, because this dude looks like he could be working at the CVS in right there at Gillette Stadium as much as he would be in there trying to make the team. And remember, Jay, there was a time where we had pride in New England on the undrafted dudes, right? Like if you made the New England Patriots as an undrafted free agent, it was somebody missed on you, or god dang, they found a gem. And even if you think of some of the 7th round guys, like remember, here's one for you. Remember Alfonso Denard, who came in and played 3 years at corner, started to act up when he got to the 4th year. Bill said, get the hell out of here. Nobody else in the league signed him. That's a point of pride, I think, for a lot of organizations. You come in, you steal cheap years, and then if the guy acts up, you get him out the door, or you end up finding your next Rex Burkhead or something like that.
Great point. And I think, and look, I think being a receiver out of the backfield, I think could be interesting. I think this guy can create some matchup problems on the outside in the slot potentially. So give me all of it. And also they picked up 2 fullbacks as undrafted free agents. Brock Lampy out of Northern Illinois, Dwayne Martin out of Louisville. That's interesting to me because you and I love hard-nosed running the football.
And I think they do as well. Here's where the issue is going to be. Where or how does a fullback make the roster? Now, I think there is a spot at tight end to be able to have what I would call like an H-back, right? If we go back in the day to remember Keith Byers became a fat tight end, so he kind of became an H-back on the move, fullback, throw it to him in the flat, right? Yep. But if you give me somebody, like I know Patrick Ricard from Baltimore is what people kind of think of now when it comes to the draft, but at least for fullback in the NFL, but there's lots of different fullbacks. So you look at Kyle Juszczyk, he's not the biggest dude, but he'll stick his, he'll stick his face mask in someone's chest plate. That's really what you're looking for. But I love the fact that Josh McDaniels has not reworked his offense to the point to where the fullback isn't a part of it. It's nice to know those plays are still in there because listen, a fullback leaking out of the flat in play action to get you a cheapo touchdown when you need one in week 15 is never a bad way to go.
100%. We're going to move on to Shadeur Sanders, but it is going to be fascinating to see how this Patriots team sort of puts it all together. Because if you think Mike Vrabel has aspirations of being below 500, you're out of your mind.
And it's 7.5 right now for the season total. That's so juicy. It's also tough because I think there's 7 wins on the schedule, but I need a lot to go right in the preseason to feel good enough maybe to bet it. But I also don't want to lose the opportunity of getting them at 7.5 as well. But nevertheless, brother, I was on national radio all weekend on this Shadeur Sanders stuff. So I almost feel like you need the floor for a minute or two to sort of give me thoughts on Shadeur, the fall, Dion, all that kind of stuff, because
you flapped a bunch about it. I get it. Well, so there's so much that's already been said that I don't want to regurgitate, frankly. You can talk about his meetings, how he only took certain meetings with certain teams and didn't sort of give his all and was, I really liked his comments, Shadeur's comments, saying that maybe he regrets some of the ways in which he behaved leading up to the draft. But for me, I prefer to look forward rather than look back. And when I look at this from the standpoint of Shadeur Sanders, he went to one of those places where he actually gets a chance to start, and it wouldn't surprise me if he emerges as the starter there. I think nothing of Kenny Pickett. Joe Flacco is there probably to be the placeholder, backup, whatever. And Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon, went 50 picks earlier, was their fourth-rated quarterback behind Ward, Dart, and Tyler Shuck. So it's just fascinating for me, but I still think Shadeur can rise up, The thing to me that I like the least for Shadeur in terms of becoming the starter is that they really liked this other quarterback, Shuck, that they took, they flew out to Eugene, Oregon the day before they went to Boulder to meet with him individually. So that's interesting. But for me, I love the way Shadeur handled it. I could go on and on about how he handled things before all this happened, but I loved how he handled it afterwards. And Shiloh, his brother, mad love to him, giving him love. And then I think he hired Drew Rosenhaus, got signed by Tampa Bay. But I hate to tell you, I got a lot more to say about Jeff Ulbricht's kid than I do about Shadeur Sanders.
Oh, please do. I would like to hear this, because it's turned into that Ulbricht's kid should be like going to jail for this. And we've had 7 other prospects now come out and say they were pranked. Mason Graham, the number 5 overall pick, was one of them when everything was going on. So the NFL tried to keep this secure, but it was Shadeur Sanders was the most high profile one, but there were other first round guys that were getting calls as well.
Well, I hear you, but I think some of those pranks, whether a phone number was available to someone or they sort of found, I think in this particular situation, this was a phone that was specifically given to him sort of for the draft.
All of them get it. Just quickly, even
Okay,
like Mason Graham. So even those phones, people ended up finding those numbers.
Gotcha. So the fact that they videoed this, and it was Jeff Ulbricht's son, Jax. It was one of his friends, I guess, who actually made the phone call.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 daughters. I've never laid a hand on them. I never will. But like, if I'm Jeff Ulbricht, right? It's like, how, like, do you realize the sensitivity of this particular type of information, and to go in there and do that? Like, I don't know, man. Stephen A. Smith talking about it, you need to beat his son's ass. It's hard for me to disagree with that. What a clown, and Jeff Ulbricht, who got this interim opportunity last year, who knows what his aspirations are? I think he's more of a coordinator than a head coach.
Correct.
But gosh, man, he's just starting with Atlanta right now. I mean, like, I would be ready to kill my son.
Well, I'd be hot at my kid as well, but guess what? Trolls get trolled. That's what I've been taught by all these youngs in the internet. So when Shadeur Sanders runs back into a locker room against a team to go put his Rolex on so that he can like point to it how cool he is and troll everybody after games, or get in the face of the Colorado State quarterback or something like that, to then troll. And by the way, make sure that Harpo, the other Sanders brother, the third one, is the one who runs the social media. Like, that's how we found out about all this to begin with, because we know that the other Sanders kid was there videoing all that other stuff. And it came down to this. If you remember correctly, Deion Sanders on national television pulled off the toupee of Howard Cosell. That's how much of an asshole he is. That's what his son became as well. Because here's the thing, Jay, Shadeur ain't seeing the field this year. How am I supposed to buy into someone who has never played for anyone outside of daddy, who's never played for a real offensive coordinator that challenged him in ways that he's never been challenged? And tell me when Shadeur Sanders has actually won a position battle. He hasn't. And you combine that with him being a jerk and his dad going on podcasts and Fox News and ABC and ESPN saying that if my guys, because remember, Travis Hunter's the real good player, all the Sanders kids aren't very good. So let me make sure I stake claim to the one guy that's going to go number 2 overall to try to maintain the power of, no, I'm going to dictate where these guys are going to go. And the NFL collectively looked at Shadeur and said, no, you're an asshat, and you're not as good as your dad. Your dad was able to pull this off because he's playing in Pro Bowls and All-Star games and stuff like that in multiple sports. The kid thought his shit didn't stink, and now he got humbled. And now he's going to go into a situation to where it ain't going to be good for him. Because here's another thing, Jay, and I know I'm rambling. Let me ask you this. How come not one teammate has come out to defend Shadeur Sanders? Not one.
It's a good point. And all your points are well taken by me. Just in terms of the prank call thing, though, right? Even Joe Shane's kid putting something about Jackson Dart in his Instagram story, right? It's like, look, my brother works for the UFC, pretty high profile position. You can be sure I know what not to say, when not to say. And I know I'm 46 years old, but it's like, I just think, these dads probably worked really hard to put their kids and set their kids up for success in life. And just to throw your dad under the bus like that, it's a different conversation. All the stuff about Shadeur is very well taken by me. I can't get Mel Kiper out of my head. You know what I mean? Like, he's been doing this for so long.
Oh, well,
fine. But I'm not. Mel Kiper ingests far more college football than I do. So the fact that he had Shadeur ranked higher than Cam Ward, which may be laughable to some, I do think Shadeur is going to be a good football player in the NFL. And that Cleveland situation, I think, could really end up being perfect for him. I really do.
Yeah, I wonder sort of how or what they're going to land on there. Like, do they want Pickett, who they think might be able to start? Do they want Flacco to just kind of get through the year? Or do they look at it and say, well, if we're going to stink, let's put Shadeur in there and let's see what happens. I just think that once people start getting under the hood with Sanders, they're going to realize that there's not much there and there's a long way to go. And it looked like a lot of NFL personnel evaluators combined with the attitude and the dad and all that stuff, it ended up pushing him down. He didn't do himself any favors. And, you mentioned the Ulbrich thing and stuff like that. Yeah, I can understand. It'd be like having your dad as an agent who completely tanks your draft stock and then you go hire a real professional. Like, seriously, you can look, the dads, unfortunately, were all over this draft. Jeff Ulbricht's a dad, Deion's a dad, all that stuff, screwing things up left and right. It's kind of amazing.
And I will say, had Shadeur hired an agent, I think things could have gone very differently.
100%, Jay. 100% it would have. Yes.
It really is interesting for those of us that don't watch college football every week. Like, I'd love to talk to someone who's a fan of the University of Colorado and really, see what they think about Shadeur, because I think, these kids are still young. And even when we talk about Drake May, it's like some of the things that I'm worried about with Drake May just be youth, so we'll see.
Here's what I would say just quickly. I talked to someone who's not only kid played there, but talked to the kid who played there in year one of Deion at Colorado. And I learned that it was about the Sanders boys and Travis Hunter, and everybody else could kind of just go to hell. And it was made to feel that way, right? Unfortunately. And now we're getting into the belly of the beast. Like, why did assistant coaches spend a year and get the hell out of there? Both coordinators and both vested NFL veteran assistants who were on the staff with Deion in year one got the hell out of there. Really what we're going to find out is Travis Hunter was the meal ticket and the Sanders kids weren't. And if I almost said Shiloh, but if Shadeur had an agent, then there would have been someone in between to give teams information that they felt like they weren't getting out of Colorado because Deion has such a stranglehold on that program and basically told everybody to shut up. But if somebody wanted to rise up and say something good about Shadeur, I'm sure Deion wasn't going to hold it against anybody. The problem was no one did. And I would dare say, and in fact, I don't have $1 million, but I bet $1 million that if we talked to those two veteran NFL assistants that got the hell out of there, they could probably really tell us what is going on. And it was reflected by what happened this weekend with Shadeur's. I'm done ranting on it.
No, and it was so fascinating because I was really thinking there was a chance that he wasn't going to get drafted at all. It's like whether it's the head coach worried about Deion Sanders coming in to take your job. For me, though, to pick him and trade up to pick him at 144.
That was the interesting thing.
Right. And then I guess it wasn't, not a great look on Barry's face and Stefanski. But for me, I just can't get Tyler Shuck out of my head or Dillon Gabriel out of my head, because
here's what it is.
Don't you want to give him a shot too?
Well, did you see the thing with Dillon Gabriel where apparently he went to one of the bowl games and threw the ball he threw like a 75-mile-an-hour pass. And normally if you have a howitzer, you're throwing a football like 60, 62 miles an hour. Apparently the kid's got a rocket for an arm. The thing with Dillon Gabriel is he is little. However, look at where he's played. Look at the competitiveness. Like everything. If Shadeur Sanders had just approached the draft process the way Dylan Gabriel did of going and competing at all-star games. Not what Shadeur did, which was he committed to the one in Texas and then backed out, only did interviews, didn't practice, basically broke the contract that they had for all those players whenever they went there. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the left-handed quarterback. I don't know. It felt like, Jay, a lot of this draft was Cleveland was setting up the next head coach and general manager that's coming in there.
Yep. So as we transition, we're talking about dads. Greg Anthony, why don't you go get your son Cole Anthony of the Orlando Magic? First of all, tell him to shave his head. Tell him to shave his head like you did, okay?
Yep.
But this dude's dirty, okay? And the Magic, I hate to say, right? It reminds me of when I used to play basketball against hockey players. And I was like, dude, no, this isn't hockey. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it is a finesse game to an extent. I understand it's a physical sport, but absolutely the officials have lost control of these games. Like, I hope the Celtics make through this series healthy. The Magic, I understand it's their only chance. They have played the Celtics well, quote unquote, this year, but the brand of basketball, a little bit of a joke, and a lot of it is dirty through my eyeballs.
I can co-sign on that. I think you can walk to the line and then go over it, and I think Orlando has clearly done that. Now, Caesar in a closeout game tonight, minus 11.5, minus 700 on the money line. So they're big to close it out. But you're right. The only way Orlando had a chance to be able to do anything was to go out there and be physical, try to beat him up, and hope that Paolo Banchero pulls a Ant-Man, and just kind of drags the team along with him within the middle of his greatness. But no, I'm with you. It's the only way that teams will play hard defense when they have talent, like the Celtics. They play tough defense. And then there are teams that play dirty defense, I think, to your point, Jay. And that's a little bit of where Orlando has kind of gone to. It's the dirty stuff that, I look, you take it to the rim, I got no problem with knocking someone on their ass, and I know Tatum hurt his wrist that way. What I would like to see is the Celtics do the same thing. That's the part that kind of gets me.
Porziņģis had a very hard foul. And that's how you do it. Hard on the arm, but nothing that's going to perhaps cause an injury, So, but I will say, as we look, and I think this Orlando team is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this conference as time goes on. Banchero is so young and so powerful. I think it's going to be they were so banged up this year too. So I think they should be very pleased. If I'm a Magic fan, I'm excited about the future. But when you look at this postseason and you look at Cleveland, right, and you called it, they absolutely waxed Miami. And you look at OKC and even you look at the Knicks, right? I think, I'm not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves. I think the Celtics handle their business. Dude, I think the Knicks are going to give the Celtics fits, unfortunately, even though they're not as good and they shouldn't. I think it's going to be a really difficult series for the Celtics to get through. I'm not trying to fast forward.
No, and we can, because that's what's going to happen. And ultimately, I look at the Knicks and say they're good enough to play pesky and be a pain in your ass. But I don't think they're good enough to beat teams like Boston. What we're finding is the Knicks are good enough to beat teams in close games like Detroit. But with the Celtics, there's a little different level of engagement. But to your point, Jay, and the one thing that I think shrinks it a little bit in terms of the gap that I thought there was going in is you can tell that Jaylen Brown's playing on a bulky knee, and you can tell that Tatum's trying to grind through the wrist injury. And that becomes the real kind of mitigating factor as to, are the Celtics going to win in 5, or might it be a tough 6-game series, or dare I say, go to a game 7 because whatever ailments kind of act up at the wrong time. But I feel really good about the way the Celtics are playing right now. Porziņģis looks great. And as long as you have him, that's the unicorn piece that really only Oklahoma City can match up against.
I agree. And when I watched the Celtics play, I really enjoyed watching them play in that game 4 and put themselves in a position where everything didn't go their way. And I think that being in a series like this against a tough physical team that's not allowing you to get off all those 3-point attempts, I think when you are in these, they're not going to. I think if you face the Knicks, it's going to be easier on the offensive side of the ball, and I think they're going to sort of a good training camp, if you will, for them in this first round playoff series.
And I also think the experience, Jay, is kind of coming through all the way around, right? Now I know Cleveland doesn't have a ton, but if you look at that version of the Miami Heat, not a ton of playoff experience in terms of high end guys, right? But you look at Lillard getting hurt for Milwaukee. Indy also did go to a conference final recently, so it's not like they don't have some experience. That one was pretty even. But look at what's happening out west. The Rockets,
I know. I'm glad you went there.
They're getting pantsed right now by Golden State.
Well, you know, and they had to get that game that Jimmy Butler was out if they were going to have a chance in the series, even as the 2 seed. But look at the Lakers on the brink of elimination. Anthony Edwards is so fun to watch. And one thing I'll say about LeBron, and you can have all the criticism you want about JJ Redick starting those 5 guys, but LeBron does not look engaged with his teammates. He looks like he's sort of sitting a little bit away. And that to me is a huge red flag. I didn't think they were gassed by the end. He got blocked by LeBron. Like, they had some juice, but I just am not seeing the energy. I was watching the end of that game with my brother John. He's like, LeBron's checked out. I agree. And it doesn't mean that he's not trying to win the game, but they had a big, they should have won both those games in Minnesota. Now you're down 3-1, come back home.
I would say this: Ant-Man, point guard, right? Maybe a 2, but guy with the ball in his hand. Who would be playing defense on him? That would be Luka.
Right.
And we know what happened last year because we saw it as Celtic fans with Luka having to ball out against somebody. Cody put in the chat here, Ant's a pest, and I love it. And I do too. He's immature. I don't like the off the court. Like, it's a bad look when you're like, yeah, I got this lady pregnant. I'll write her the check and not talk to her for 18 years. There's a little bit of that. That's a little off-putting to some people. But man, if Ant-Man can just grow up a little bit and stop getting these technical fouls, he's the next guy. He really, I feel like as LeBron eases out, Ant-Man kind of slides into that place a little bit if he can control some of the personality wildness that's in him.
I agree. Do you think Golden State could beat OKC?
Yep.
I do too.
Yep, I do too, because they know how to win in tough situations. And even the other night, I think they got down by 10 on the road or something like that. And there's no panic. There's no craziness. There's no pointing fingers or yelling at each other or anything like that. Draymond will get a little jacked up, but they know. And Steph is not a great defender, but he gives you great effort. But how do they go about trying to slow down SGA? Who ultimately gets that assignment? And do they end up putting Draymond out there a little bit on SGA just to kind of shake things up a little bit? It'll be interesting to see the size battle, but no, I give Golden State a chance in any series, especially against a team that hasn't kind of been there and done that yet. And OKC took it on the chin last year. They're off to a great start, but now we're going to start to see them against more representative competition.
I know we're going to get out of here soon, but what I find sometimes with matchups and looking forward to a matchup for a team you root for, like for the Celtics, right? Worst case scenario for me last year would have been Kyrie Irving beating the Boston Celtics in the NBA final, right? But a best case scenario is you actually get the chance to beat Kyrie Irving, right? Golden State, Kyrie, right? Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. If in fact the Celtics and the Warriors make it to the NBA finals, I don't even know if I could watch because I'd be so nervous. But losing to Jimmy Butler on the Warriors after losing them a couple years ago in the finals would be a worst case scenario, but to avenge that and get through them is almost like a best case scenario. So I think the Celtics are going to have a difficult time getting back to the finals this year. I really do. My confidence is not the same as it was a week ago because it's a gauntlet, man.
Well, it is. I still think the Celtics win in 5, maybe 6 against the Knicks. And we'll see what the Cavs are like. It was easy pickings against Miami, I think. They're going to get Indiana, and that's a whole different level of engagement and a team that is starting to build a little bit of playoff success. So I think Cleveland's going to be in for a tougher battle than you think. I just don't see the Knicks, their best player. The Knicks' best player is not as good as the Celtics' third player.
Fair.
If you were doing a draft, would you still not take Tatum, Brown, and Porziņģis before you would take Brunson?
No, I am not a fan of Jalen Brunson, so I would take Porziņģis. But but if I'm doing rankings, I'd probably put Brunson number 3, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and all right, so let's have a little bit of fun here because I know you and I were going to need an hour just on the draft by itself to get ready for it. But we know that the Celtics can close out tonight. The Knicks, Indiana, they can close out as well. It's Nuggets, Clippers, Game 5. Work staying up late for. But one of the questions going around on the interwebs is, 100 men versus a gorilla. I can't believe this is a thing. I can't believe this is a real thing, but there we go. What do you mean?
So Cody brought it up last night, and I brought it up to my wife, and she's like, I can't believe you hadn't heard about this. I'm like, what do you mean you can't believe I haven't heard about this? It was a social media craze, right? My brother's commentated for the UFC, so right, I'm thinking about my 100 men, right? Gosh, I've gone down some gorilla rabbit holes, right? Apparently, they are very difficult to concuss. I'm just thinking about some world-class kickboxers, right? We're going to start with Yuri Prohaska.
Look at those things.
But I mean, my question is, you know, you get Wonder Boy with a head kick. I mean, can these things be stunned a little bit and maybe ground and pounded? But I don't know, man. I may take the gorilla.
See, here's the problem with the UFC fighters against the gorilla is the sheer strength of the gorilla, number one. Every UFC fighter is going to want to keep distance. So who's ultimately going to be the one that's going to get in there and maybe be like the sacrificial lamb in a way? So this thing grabs someone so somebody else could get in its eyes or something like that.
Right.
All those UFC guys. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, look how far outside some of these MMA guys love. Like we said, the Bilal, right? Who, from what you've taught me, might have the best fight IQ in the UFC, understands fighting inside and out. What would he do in something like that? He would say, I would stay away. So even with those, if somebody doesn't have a lead pipe or something, who's making the first move on this thing that could absolutely just snap your neck like that?
Well, and how many deaths are we allowed, right? I mean, you might get the gorilla out of there, but are we suffering 10 human deaths? I mean,
people are dying. There's no question.
Like, I just think about all these strikes, and the bottom line is all these mixed martial artists, their strikes would not have an impact.
Yeah, it wouldn't. And but because I think the hook has got to be what 100 men, right?
Right.
Like really, what 100 men are we talking about here? Are we talking about like 100 crystal meth tweakers who can't
there you
feel
go.
anything, right? Right? Like that.
That's the move.
Is one of your 100 somebody that's hopped up on meth that can't feel anything? They're the one that goes into the gorilla, and then everybody else can get in.
Yes.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Or is it what if it's like people that are all under like 5'7" or something like that?
Right.
What if it's all people like me that are largeos where, like I might be able to get on the thing's back, but are you kidding me? Like this to me might be a little bit of a fair representation, at least early on. Here's the problem. You got to go dirty against the gorilla, right?
Exactly.
Nards and eyes. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, listen, if you end up getting in a scrap or something like that, and you're in a bad way, do the old thumb it's what they taught the old carnies.
Street fight.
Thumb to the corner of the eye and just try to scoop their eye out. And the first thing they'll do is go like this, and then you have your ability to attack and do what you want. I think you would have to try to do that to the gorilla.
I agree. That gorilla looked a lot like Will Campbell with those long arms out there on the field there. Unbelievable.
Oh, I love it. I was waiting for Mike Francesa to show up. I was waiting for Mike to show up and give us play-by-play on you saved the gorilla. You remember that when he's freaking out about
yeah, that's right.
You saved the gorilla. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, that it is interesting, but I got to tell you, there's definitely some deaths, and I would say maybe there should be within those 100 a sacrificial lamb. You either bring somebody hopped up on drugs who doesn't feel anything, or you have an old who knows it's their time, and okay, we're going to try to save you from this gorilla killing you. However, we're going to kill it because it's going to kill you. So 1 out of 99 gets 1 out of 100 ends up getting sacrificed. Oh my God, Cody.
Yeah, I'm not bringing that to air.
Who you're putting?
But no, you think about some of these sumo wrestlers, right? But I'm taking gorilla. If
you're going to throw Aki Bono in there, are you?
Hey, I got Gus the gorilla back here. I'm going gorilla.
They are scary to say the least. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on what show are you getting Celtic talk, Patriots draft breakdown, gorilla talk, and Celtics bets and things of that nature? You can, first of all, folks, you should have downloaded the John Anik app already. If you haven't, go download it today. I know I got my first email over the weekend from johnanik.com, which was good to know and good to see. The shirts are on sale on the John Anik app. And Jay's going to be on UFC Fight Pass Main event this weekend, Sandhagen Figueiredo. What exactly are you doing for Fight Pass?
So I'll be sitting in this seat just doing a little watch along. So we're going to do the main event. Me and my guy, Brandon McCatherine, who runs the Professional Grappling Federation world. So should be fun, but I've done some of that, but it's awesome. You get the feed and you just sit and watch fights and you're not really commentating as much as you're sort of commenting.
Yeah, you're reacting
on what's going on. Exactly. So it should be fun. But, you know, I've done some of these watch alongs with my brother where he sort of calls it a little bit, which is kind of cool because it's his natural instinct. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, he can't help himself, right?
Exactly.
It'd be like a football coach being like, you know, why the hell are they using that guy in the slot on third down type thing?
Exactly.
So catch Jay on Fight Pass this weekend. Download the John Anik app. I'll be on Mad Dog Radio, 8 a.m. to noon on this Saturday, and then the Infinity Sports Network, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sunday. And I actually had someone hurl a slur at me over the weekend, so I know that I'm doing a decent job of pushing buttons on the weekend, getting people all fired up over football. We will have to push the Belichick interview to next week because Jordan is now running some things. I mean, there's so many things that you could add to that. And congratulations to those of you who did follow some of our picks and our bets and our wagers. The top 7 selections that we went through to be the number 7 pick, they all ended up hitting because it wasn't team, it was draft slot. So there was a lot of money to be made. And if you had the under at plus 285 on Shadeur Sanders at over under 8.5, you cashed early and then were able to sit and enjoy as everything crumbled around the guy. All right, that's it for us. It's another edition of Gas, a little bit of gas overtime to have fun talking about the Gorillas. We know the football season we're transitioning out of, but we are full-blown Celtics, I'm sure. Next week on Gas, great job, Cody Merrow. Jay, I'll see you later. People, will see you next week.